The Oklahoma Sooners escaped Manhattan, Kansas 42-35 on Saturday. Now look for a homecoming weekend. Cliff Kingsbury, Texas Tech Red Raiders. It's Baker Mayfield's last shot at his former school. What's going on, everybody? Matt Hofeld with Heartland-Sports.com along with Rich DeCray. We got to start where we always start. That's with the previous game. And how surprised were you, Rich, that this game again, not only was it closer than the point spread, and a lot of people had expected. However, if you read our How to Watch post, I had this as a close game. I had it within 7. So it was actually not as close as I even picked it. But how surprised were you at not the outcome, because it was an Oklahoma win, but the narrowness of the victory?
I personally was extremely surprised. And when you look at what Bill Snyder has been able to do at Kansas, it's oftentimes with lesser quality athletes, not as highly touted. So coming into the game, I always expect that display of talent to take over a game. And it simply didn't happen for Oklahoma. We talk about the quick starts that they've had. That didn't happen for them on Saturday as well. We talk about the slow finishes that they've had. That didn't happen for them. So it was really this kind of breaking of trends for Oklahoma. We knew Oklahoma was going to get everybody's best shot throughout the entire year. But when it came to Kansas State, I knew Kansas State would score points. I just didn't think that they would be leading at any point of the game.
Sooners were outscored 21-10 in the first half. A couple of game-changing things, because we're about to be really critical about the defense. At least I think I am. I don't know how you are, but one thing that, the Jordan Thomas's interception right before the half, I felt like was a momentum swing for Oklahoma. And then really for all the bad that has been Oklahoma's defense over the last month, the fact that they were able to hold Kansas State scoreless in that third quarter. They were able to make some adjustments, force the hand, so to speak, of the Wildcats, and make them move away from what had worked so well in the first and the second quarters. Defense also got 2 turnovers from Kansas State on Saturday, which helped out as well. But before we get super critical of the defense, and by the way, I'm going to be, I think, pretty critical of the offense today as well. But before we get super critical of the defense, don't you at least have to point out the fact that the defense got 2 turnovers and the defense changed the course of this game in the third quarter? Let's stop there, because there's another part of that, and then I'm going to keep going. But defense, offense put up 42 points, so you gotta give them some accolades. I've got some criticism there. Defense gave up 35, but without the defense shutting out Kansas State in the third quarter, 42 is not enough. So at what point do you say, okay, the defense did this good, but the rest of it was bad? Is that fair?
Here, I'll give you my assessment of the defense. And we were talking a little bit about this before we jumped on to actually record anything. And the one thing that I neglected to say to you before we started recording was, You're a body language person. You like to look at, if heads are down, kind of the excitement on the sideline. So I would be surprised if you didn't catch this. At the same time, I wouldn't be surprised if you missed it. And that's when Oklahoma came into the game, there was a lack of excitement. There wasn't, at least to my knowledge, there wasn't any of this jawing back and forth that we're used to seeing. Specifically, Baker Mayfield leading that, stepping out on the field, pregame warm-ups. Before fans even show up, there's a lot of talking back and forth. I'm not aware of any of that going on, but looking at the sideline, I just didn't see that same level of excitement for this game in Manhattan. Maybe that's because of the weather. Maybe that's because it was on the road. Oklahoma is expected to win. I don't know what it was. But then, second play of the game, you give up a 75-yard touchdown run. It's demoralizing for a defense. It really is.
Right.
And I would think that with the lack of excitement and giving up that big play, I don't want to say they gave up because they obviously won the game, but there was an opportunity for them to just completely fall flat and lose that one 42-20.
Yeah,
42-24.
The offense was going to get going. This Oklahoma offense. They get going. There's things. Well, we're going to get an offense.
Here's what I'm saying about the defense. I'll finish it with this: is that as bad as they were in the first half, something changed in the second half. You could tell that the defense was hitting harder. Lincoln Riley alluded to this in his post game, as well as players and other coaches. They were talking about the ability to simply execute, to get off those blocks, and we didn't see that in the first half, but we did in the second.
And I think it's a schematics thing. We've talked before about the coaches put you in position to succeed, and I think the schematics of the first half, and really what you have when you're defending a Bill Snyder offense, a Bill Snyder team, they do so much with the quarterbacks. Going back, they kept talking about Colin Klein and the fact that he's a quarterbacks coach, and Oklahoma fans remember Colin Klein, but what he could do running the football and what he could do throwing the football, you really had to account for that. Kansas State is not as built for throwing the ball this year as they have been in years past, and I think Oklahoma's tried to initially defend this game where we're going to play the run and the pass equally, and when what they did with the linebackers, I know for a fact in the first half, the linebackers had both quarterback read and tight end coverage. And there were times where there was confusion as to whether the tight end was coming out to block or whether the tight end was going on a passing route, and you got your linebackers out of position. And so I think the schematics of a change third quarter. Mike Stoop was just like, hey, we're just going to straight up play to stop the run, and that's why you didn't really you saw the big running plays in the first half, and then you saw the big passing plays in the second half. But I think going back to it, if they could do it over, it's let's just make them beat us with their arm and just we're going to stop the run. Now this coming weekend is going to be a different test, but I guess the point I'm making is this: when it comes to Oklahoma, I think when you talk about fans, gone are the days right now. Gone are the days where you go out and you put your helmet on the field and you say, "We win because of the logo." That team is not around anymore. But a team that's pretty dang good is still around. And I've talked to other people about this, and I don't know if I'm right or wrong on it, honestly. But I think this Oklahoma defense, I think if you put them up against a traditional offense, and we've seen it this year with Ohio State, you put them up against a traditional offense, they're going to be pretty good. But there's something about the Big 12, and I don't think it's bad defense. Look at the bowl. Look at how the Big 12 did in bowl games last year. Look how Big 12 has done in non-conference games this year. But there's something about the Big 12 where you're just going to surrender points. And I don't know if it's worth pulling your hair out and getting upset about, as long as you're able to match point for point. I mean, go back and look at the Big 12 scores from last week. Now, TCU gets a shutout, but they're playing Kansas. But, I mean, Baylor outscored West Virginia 23-0 in the fourth quarter. And was a 2-point, by the way, the only game I lost in Friday Locks, but a 2-point conversion away from tying that game and sending it into overtime. There's not a lot of defense played in the Big 12, and I don't know that it's because the defenses in the Big 12 are bad, but it's because the offenses in the Big 12 are designed in such a way that it's not possible really to stop an offense. And when you look at Kansas State, 35 points is egregious, in my opinion. But 400 yards is what they gave. Oklahoma, on the flip side, I think Oklahoma put up over 600 yards. I had it open. Yeah, 619 yards for Oklahoma's offense, 29 first downs. And Kansas State's a team that we say pretty good defense. TCU is a good defensive team, but they gave up over 500 yards to Oklahoma State. I just don't know where the good defenses are in the Big 12. And it's not because I don't believe there's good defensive coordinators. It's not because I don't believe that there's good talent on the defense. I just think the offenses have such, in today's game, the offenses have such an advantage over the defense. And that's why the spread exploits things. Everything from how you if you hit the quarterback too high, it's personal foul. You hit the quarterback too low, it's a personal foul. What you're taught is to never drop your head. Don't always keep your eyes up, face up, see your target. Well, you got to go for the midsection now, and you've got to be just on time. And then the receiver, you can't hit a receiver trying to catch the ball anymore. If you hit him too high, you're going to get ejected for targeting. If you hit him too low, if he's in the air, he's a defenseless receiver, that could get you a flag, or people are going to say you're dirty because you're going for the legs. I know this sounds like a prepackaged built-in excuse. I get that. But Oklahoma's defense has issues. Yes, they do. But I think when you look at defenses across the board, there's issues, and those issues have more to do with the offense that's lined up across from them than the personnel on the field or the coaches. Does that make sense? Any thoughts on that?
It does make sense when it comes to the defenses. The way that I see it working is that offenses and defenses ebb and flow. Offenses usually push the boundaries of what we thought was capable first, and then defenses are playing catch up. And schematically, they do catch up, and then the offenses evolve again to counter what the defenses have been doing. And go back to, because we had one of the most prolific offenses here at Oklahoma. That was most prolific in the nation back in 2008. And what happens? A defense like Florida steps in and they figure out a way to stop it. No one else was capable of doing that. That was a team that put up 60 points a game.
Yeah, but I get
60 points a game.
I get it, but they stopped it without DeMarco Murray. You don't think DeMarco Murray? I do. You don't think Florida has to play Oklahoma different if DeMarco Murray's in that game?
I do, but at the same time, why does it take 40 points off the board? It shouldn't.
It doesn't take 40 points off the board. It changes the scheme. You don't have to worry about if you're a defensive coordinator, what you want to do is you want to remove one aspect of the game. Make them one-dimensional, right? And if you can make a team one-dimensional, again, think about the first half. Oklahoma made Kansas State one-dimensional. They made them run the football in the first half, and they couldn't stop the run. So they flipped it in the second half.
Because that's what Kansas State does.
Well, right. So they flipped it in the second half, and they took away the run and said, hey, we're just going to go man-to-man in the passing game. And they knew that was a gamble, which is why they didn't want to go with it in the first place. But you go man-to-man in the passing game, and you stop the run, and it changed the course of the game. You want to make a team one-dimensional. You want to find what works. And when you don't have DeMarco Murray in your backfield, it makes it easier for the opposing defense to make your team one-dimensional. You can do the same thing. Look at what happened when Oklahoma lost Sterling Shepard. Look what happened when Oklahoma lost Ryan Broyles. When they don't have that key player, it changes the scheme of the defense. Because, hey, all of a sudden it's a lot easier to make them a pass-heavy offense and play nickel-dime coverage, do cover two, Tampa defense, because they can't run as effectively as they could if DeMarco Murray's in there. It's easy. That's just to me Florida won that game, yes, but that's a whole different game in my opinion if you have a healthy DeMarco Murray. So I refute your argument, sir.
And you can very well do so, but when you look at the backup, wasn't it Chris Brown? Correct me if I'm wrong.
It was Chris Brown, but
I shouldn't say that Chris Brown was a backup because they were a 1-2 punch, and it's hard for me to sit here and say that Chris Brown was incapable of moving.
Hey, what's Chris Brown doing today?
I don't know. Hanging out right here at the table with us.
What's DeMarco Murray doing today?
He's not running for very many yards.
He's playing in the NFL. He was the NFL's leading rusher 2 seasons ago.
He was behind the best offensive line. DeMarco Murray is a good football player. We can agree on that. Obviously, when you reach the level that he does, we are so far off course at this point. But my point being, Matt, is that I just don't. I can't jump on board with you and say that the loss of one player impacts an entire team. Let's talk about Ohio State then, because when they lose their starting quarterback, in fact, they drop down to their third-string quarterback. You want to tell me what his name was again?
Cardell Jones.
You want to tell me what he's doing today?
We didn't come here to play school.
You want to tell me what he's doing today?
I don't know, but
okay then.
But again, that's a very small sample size.
It is.
When you talk about when you talk about it happens, and it's happened in the course of college football. I mean, it has happened. I remember Ronaldo Works going crazy late in an Alabama game in Norman to win that game. It happens. You get that guy who's kind of a spark plug, has that flash in the pan type moment. But the reality is, when you don't, you're telling me those teams, when they saw that Ohio State was down to their third string quarterback, those defenses didn't say, "Yay, we'll stop the run and we're going to win this game."
Apparently, they said yay all the way to losing the national championship.
Because the plan was, here's the deal, the plan was to stop the run and make them beat you through the air. And they had a backup who could do that. And he did it. But again, it affected the defensive schematics of the thing, of the whole thing. You have to, when you're playing defense, you want to limit, you want to make them one-dimensional. And in the Big 12, this is the whole point I was making. In the Big 12, you have to pick your poison.
I agree with you.
And the only team you don't have to pick your poison against is Kansas.
The question that we were attempting to answer that you were asking me was about Big 12 defenses.
Uh-huh.
And it's all I was getting at was that the spread offense, it does push the boundaries of what people thought was capable, and it's continuously evolving. And when you get skill players in there that are the level that we're seeing today, it's a completely different game. The level of athlete, a freshman, collegiate athlete stepping onto the field for the first time who looks like Samaje Perine, who looks like Trey Sermon, that's a thing of today. I don't think that happens 15 years ago. I don't think that happens 20 years ago. But the reality of the situation for me, looking at Big 12 defenses, I think there are good Big 12 defenses. They're just lagging behind the offensive firepower. And when we look across the nation, the Big 12 is always going to be one of the leading conferences, team by team, top to bottom, one of the leading conferences in offensive, not only points per game, but also yards per game. Yeah, so how do you expect a defense to compete with that?
You're making my point. You're making my point.
No, that's what I'm saying is, but when we're looking at the defenses, are they bad? No, I'm agreeing with you in that situation.
Sorry, I'm doing some research here while you keep talking. You're doing good.
TCU has a good defense. We've looked at Oklahoma. You've mentioned the Ohio State game. Granted, Oklahoma needs to put together a complete game. They need to put together 4 quarters, not this second half heroics that we saw against Kansas State, or this first half explosion that kind of carries them through the past or the next 2 quarters. They've got to put together a complete game, and that's honestly where their weakness has been at this point in time.
Here we're gonna move on from here. All right, so in the top 10, when you look at college football, in the top 10, you got one Big 12 defense. That's Texas Christian, TCU.
Yeah.
By far, I think we're.
Are you looking at scoring defenses?
Yeah, points allowed. So I think because to me that's the stat that matters. Okay. I don't care if you give up 1,000 yards if you're on the
points.
Right. Okay. I mean, so the point that matters is what's on the board. Okay, that's the stat that matters. TCU is number 9 in the country overall defense. Okay, the next defense down. I know you're going to look at my cheat sheet so you can see it, but you have to go all the way down to 34 to find the next Big 12 defense, and that's surprise, surprise, Iowa State at 34.
They've been impressive this year.
But flip that over. Big 12 offenses, you've got 4 in the top 10. Mm-hmm. You've got Oklahoma.
That's what I'm saying, man.
Right, but listen, Oklahoma State's number 3. No, you're actually echoing mine, sir. Oklahoma State number 3, West Virginia number 4, OU number 7, TCU number 9. Now, here's the whole thing. The national argument is going to be the Big 12 can't play defense. That's the national argument. Mm-hmm. And that's the argument of the Oklahoma fan after they give up 35 points to Kansas State. But here's my question. Let's ask Urban Meyer. Let's ask JT Barrett. Let's ask those guys if they think Oklahoma can play defense. Because the answer is going to be yes. It's just the offenses are so different in the Big 12. Oklahoma knew they could take the run away from Ohio State and JT Barrett wasn't going to beat them. Name a quarterback in the Big 12 that you can say that same thing about. Go to Kansas again, and that's probably your only answer. And no one even knows the name of the quarterback in Kansas. The point is, Oklahoma's defense, is it disappointing? Yes, absolutely it is.
I think you could do it with Texas.
I don't know, because he can beat you. I mean,
go for it.
I'm just saying,
if you
he
take away
beat
the
Kansas
run,
State.
if you take away the run from Texas, though, they're
Texas doesn't have. They can't run. Texas can't run the ball. There's a reason why going into that last weekend, their quarterback, a true freshman, is a leading carrier,
right,
or the leading rusher.
But the reality for Texas, it is, when will we see a true offensive line from Texas? Because that's been their downfall.
Well,
so the defense has had to carry them all season long.
And it's a built-in excuse because of all the injuries. Mm-hmm. Whether that offensive line was really what it was hyped to be, we'll never know.
Right.
Because of the injuries. But I've got lots of thoughts on Texas and that Oklahoma State game because I think both coaches played that game not to win. They tried to avoid losing because they both have so many question marks on the offensive line. If you're Oklahoma State, at what point, you've got to be frightened that Matt Amendola and the kicking problems are going to get you. You've got to be worried that the offensive line issues, they're so afraid to pass the ball right now. They ran the ball 50 times against the Texas Longhorns. 50.
Which is crazy.
Because the strength of the Texas defense is stopping the run.
And statistically, you have the second best quarterback in the nation. It's Baker Mayfield statistically, and then it's Mason Rudolph. Why you're not throwing the ball is inexcusable. Number two is that I fully believed Oklahoma State should have lost that game. They essentially lucked out. You get a field goal in overtime and then the interception to end the game. There were numerous chances for Texas to win that game. But Oklahoma State's defense, they produced a gem. There's no way around that. They were the saving grace. Oklahoma State should have lost that game.
Hey, let me ask you this question: Why we're talking Oklahoma, Texas?
Oklahoma State, Texas.
Yeah, that's what I said. What has changed in Austin? How's Texas different under Tom Herman?
Well, it's a good question, Matt. The one thing that
think about Saturday's loss. Missed field goals, terrible offensive line play, terrible offensive play calling, and then just I don't know. When I go back to that overtime, did you see the interception?
I didn't.
It was everyone's saying it's a freshman mistake. No, it's a Texas play. And anybody who's not covered in burnt orange will say that's the kind of stuff Texas has been doing for the last 4 or 5 years. The quarterback just kind of rolls out. It's third down. You're only down a field goal in overtime. It's third down. You're rolling out, and there's nothing there, and so he just lobs the ball. You can't even say he was trying to force a play because it's a lob. It's just like I would throw it to my 7-year-old daughter, just lobbing it up there.
That's jackpot.
And there was the closest guy there was Ramon Richards, the guy who intercepted it for Oklahoma State. And I just sat there and going, what? Texas is going to Texas. That's what they do. Is that not what Texas does? And I have been an advocate of Tom Herman. I have said multiple times if someone can change the culture in Texas, it's Tom Herman. But Tom Herman's biggest thing is not going to be X's and O's. It's not going to be recruiting. It's going to be changing that culture. And I don't know how you do that. I really don't know. That game was far from a sellout. The fans have already given up on the team, just like they've done in the last 5 years. The players are arguing. You got dads. Amani Foreman's dad is tweeting about Tom Herman. And Texas is a train wreck right now. It is a dumpster fire. And I'm tired of hearing from Texas fans on Twitter, we'll wait till next year. Have we not heard that for 5 years in a row now? How many times have you heard, we got the best recruiting class in the Big 12 coming up? Have we not heard that one before as well? How many of those kids are going to stay? I can tell you for a fact, I can tell you we saw Kendall Thompson at the Oklahoma-Tulane game. Why is Kendall Thompson his dad played for OU. I get that. That's what Texas fans are going to play it off as. Yeah, his brother went to OU. His dad played for OU. He lives in Moore. Of course he's gonna be at an OU game, right? Why is he there? Why is he? I'm just saying. Hey, my son played football with Kendall Thompson.
Casey Thompson.
Yeah, Casey. I'm saying Kendall way too much, aren't I? Yeah. Mm-hmm. My son played football with him, and my son's the first one to recognize him. Hey, Dad, that's Casey Thompson right there. Casey came over and talked to us. The other thing I wanted to say is, why are you here?
Casey Thompson. I don't have any sources. I don't have any inside knowledge. But with Cameron Rising going to Texas, he'll most likely be the starter there. I don't see a way that...
You've got a true freshman who's starting right now.
I know, but I think Cameron Rising can beat him out. And I think Ellinger becomes the backup. Michelle,
so then,
the third stringer.
Okay, so
what I'm getting at, Matt, is I think Casey Thompson's going to switch his commitment. And like I said, I don't have that on any source or any inside knowledge.
Let's say that's true. Let's say that's true, okay? Let's say it's true. And Casey Thompson comes to Oklahoma. Sam Ellinger loses his starting job to Cameron Rising sometime in the spring or fall. I think Cameron Rising is going to try to graduate early, be an early enrollee, okay? So let's say he loses his job, most likely it'd be in the fall. My question remains, what's changed with Texas? Is this not Colt McCoy, David Ash, Case McCoy? Is this not the whole Garrett Gilbert? You remember when Garrett Gilbert was the next thing? You guys better watch out for Garrett Gilbert. I mean, it's like the never-ending excuse train, and it's losing football.
I'm going to say this, just to provide a different perspective and a combative perspective, if you will, to the one that you're throwing out currently. When you look at the Texas record right now, they're currently 3-4. Not where a program hopes to be, not where a first-year coach hopes to be. But the reality of the situation is they have lost 3 of those games by 7 or less points. Let me rephrase that. They've lost 3 of those games by 5 points or less. We look at being on the cusp of being, for a Texas team, literally being on the cusp of 6-1. That's a huge change from 3-4. I'm not saying to hang your hat on that because a loss is a loss, but if Tom Herman can get some of his own recruits in there and then actually have a difference, actually make a change on the field, I get what you're saying is a change of culture, but I don't think Tom Herman has, through 7 games, I mean, are we really going to say that Texas is a train wreck? Because 1, Tom Herman hasn't had an opportunity to recruit at Texas. 2, he's a first-year head coach. Things will change. You and I sat here a week ago, Matt, or maybe it was 2 weeks ago, and we said Tom Herman is the coach to watch. He's one of those guys that Oklahoma fans need to hope moves on. And these were your words. You need to hope that the NFL absorbs him and offers him a job.
I get that, but that's...
So I just feel like you've changed your tune completely.
Because I've paid more attention the last 2 weeks to Texas football than honestly I have all season long. I watched them lose to Maryland. I watched the overtime against USC. And then I watched the full game against Maryland. I watched the overtime against USC. Obviously, I watched all of Oklahoma in Texas. And then I watched all of Oklahoma State in Texas. And I'm telling you, what I'm seeing on Twitter, what I'm seeing on the field, what I'm reading on the internet or in the newspaper, and what I'm hearing people say, including yourself, it's nothing's changed. Nothing has changed.
Should I expect things to change year one?
Okay.
No.
Go back to August. Go back to August.
I'll give you you should see a change in year one.
Okay.
And the reason being
stop
is because of Matt Rule.
Stop for just a second. I'm going last year. Based on what you said about the losses.
Mm-hmm.
Texas loses to Notre Dame by 3. They lose to Cal by a touchdown. They lose to Oklahoma by 5. They lose to Kansas State by 3. They beat Baylor by 1. They beat Texas Tech by 8. They lost to West Virginia by 4. They lost to Kansas by 3. What has changed? You're bringing up narrow losses. Tell me what's different under Tom Herman.
Nothing at this point.
So then Texas fans just need to shut up. Stop saying next year. Because I'm waiting on next year. I've been waiting.
Like I said.
Do you remember way back in the day when we first started Crimson and Cream Machine? I mean, think back that far, okay? When we first started that website, and our big rival was Texas A&M. What did we make fun of the Texas A&M folks for? Because it was always wait till next year. Do you remember that?
That was Oklahoma State.
Oklahoma State's been there as well.
Texas A&M was once every 10 years.
But the point is, that's who Texas has become. They've become the wait till next year team. Well, next year has been 5 years ago, and it's still not here. I'm tired of waiting for next year. Texas fans, you got to either suck it up and say we're a train wreck right now, or just keep...
Or find that fairy dust. Start sprinkling it all over campus.
Okay, we got to get back. We had we've been 30 minutes.
Can I conclude with this?
Go ahead.
Is that, number one is I'm not in the same boat as you are. I see your point, and I think that it is valid, but it's hard for me to pass judgment of such crucial nature on a guy who, what we saw him do at Houston, and say that he can't change the culture at Texas. I think that that's still a reality. It's still a possibility for him. Will it happen this year? No, absolutely not, and I don't expect it to. Will it happen next year? Maybe not. But year 3, I expect to see a change.
It better start changing next year. But that's the thing. Charlie Strong, we've heard this argument. Look what Charlie Strong did at Louisville. I mean, look how he had Louisville as a national contender. Oh, man, and what's he going to do when he gets the reins of Texas? The biggest alumni base, the biggest money. Everybody wants to play for Texas. I mean, I'm just saying, we've heard this. We have heard it before.
It's true. But like I said, I'm still sitting on that side of the fence.
Okay, stay over there. Stay over there and put your burnt orange face paint on. All right, Will Johnson.
For Halloween, I will. Thanks.
Will Johnson, Oklahoma, 10 tackles on Saturday, kind of led the charge for Oklahoma's defense. Agreed, Oklahoma's defense is they're struggling. I mean, I'm not the whole premise of this was not. I don't even know how we got into the Texas debate.
We were talking about offenses, defense,
but the whole premise is Oklahoma's defense. Yes, they're struggling. But defenses across the board in the Big 12 are struggling, and the winner of the Big 12 is going to be the team that overcomes the defensive struggles. That's just, I mean, that to me, that's bottom line. You win the Big 12 by overcoming defensive struggles. Offensive side of the ball, I've got more of an issue with what Oklahoma did offensively than what happened defensively. Because if you remember last week's podcast when we did score predictions, you remember what I said about this game. I said the defense, it's going to be a close game, and the defense has to prove that they can not make it a close game before I pick them to win by the point spread. Do you remember me saying that?
Yeah.
So I was okay because I expected this from the defense. Tell me why. My son, my oldest son, he thinks Baker Mayfield's getting the shaft when it comes to the NFL. His thought is he looks at me and he says, "Hey, I'm seeing what Mason Rudolph is doing. I'm seeing what Baker Mayfield's doing. I'm seeing two different quarterbacks. One is far superior to the other. Why is Mason Rudolph the NFL darling in the Big 12 and not Baker Mayfield?" He's thinking Baker Mayfield's getting the shaft when it comes to pro prospects and so forth. In your opinion right now, give me not just quarterback, but give me your top 3 best offensive players in the country.
Just offensive?
Offensive players in the country. Give me your top 3.
Are we looking from an NFL
No, I'm just
mindset?
saying right now in college football, you look at the landscape of college football, you've got to go win a game this Saturday. You can take any 3 offensive players in the country. Tell me who you're going to take. If you say Sam Darnold, I'm going to punch you in the face.
I think you've got to look at Barkley.
Okay.
Number 1. You may disagree with this, and that's okay. I think you've got to take a look at Lamar Jackson, regardless of the losses. And I think you've got to look at collegiate. If I'm looking at just best offensive players, I've got to throw Baker Mayfield in there.
But you can't. You got Lamar Jackson. You can only have one quarterback.
Why?
Because I mean, you're going to play 2 quarterbacks?
No,
I'm telling you.
You didn't tell me that part.
Well, that's just a given.
You tricked me.
That's just a given. You've got. Let me put it this way. Let me.
Because I would put Bryce Love up there as well.
Let me dumb down the question for you, okay? So, final drive of the game. Mm-hmm. You want the ball in one of these 3 guys' hands. Give me a receiver, a running back, receiver/tight end, a running back, and a quarterback. These are the guys you got to score on this drive. Who you taking?
I couldn't name a receiver for you.
Okay.
And that's unfortunate. So
you're making this so hard.
Here we go. I would say
so James Washington. I would take James Washington.
Yeah, I can see that. I would say Barkley
as your running back, and
no questions asked.
You've got a quarterback.
If I'm looking for a quarterback who can deliver a knockout punch,
it's the clutch. You've got to score. Who's it going to be?
It's Baker Mayfield.
So tell me why Oklahoma's taking Baker Mayfield off the field multiple times in key plays, key downs. Why are we taking him off the field and putting in Kyler Murray? Why are we running? I like
you and I are going to disagree.
I like the wildflower. I like it when it works, but it clearly wasn't working Saturday night. Why do we have to run that more than twice? Give me 2 times with it and it gets shut down. I don't need it anymore. Baker Mayfield, hands down, the best player in college football right now. And you've got to have points. You've got to have a first down. And you're taking this guy off the field. You're moving him out to a wide receiver so you can snap it to Demetri Flowers. Or you're taking him off the field altogether and putting Kyler Murray in. Okay, you've got a different opinion on this. I want to hear it.
I do have a different opinion, and because you have to go back throughout the previous games this season. You want to guess at how many times you're affectionately calling it the wildflower formation? Do you want to know how many times they've run that before Kansas State?
Twice?
3.
3 times? Okay.
You want to know how many times it failed?
None.
0. Exactly.
Right. But if it fails 2 times in a row, I'm done with it. I didn't need to see it a 3rd and a 4th time. That's the point I'm making. I'm okay with doing it once. I'm okay with doing it twice. But don't keep doing it over and again. Especially on the same drive in the same situation.
Odds.
I don't want to hear odds. When you're
from a coaching perspective.
No, stop. Don't do that. Because when you're getting blown up at the line of scrimmage on that play, it's not the odds are it's going to get blown up again. I get what you're trying to say, but the point is Kansas State beat that play at the point of attack. Did you notice that I think the 3rd time no one even covered Baker Mayfield? It was 11 against 10 because they're just like nothing's happening with that guy out there.
Which is why people laugh at the end when Baker Mayfield's asked about that very situation, and he said, "I'd be a lot happier if they'd throw the ball in my direction even." You know, and
I'm okay with that.
That was the idea.
When I used to coach, there were times. I'm telling you, there are times. There are times you know this. When I used to coach, and I would see a receiver come out to the sideline where I'm standing. I'm coaching. I've got a defensive back. I'm always right there at the line of scrimmage. I could look at that receiver and I could say, "No way in heck that kid's getting the ball." And I would tell my defensive back, my corner, cheat because you're supposed to be inside anyway. I'm like, just cheat in. They're just trying to stretch the field. There's no way they're throwing the ball to this kid. And that's what Kansas State did with Baker Mayfield. They're like, there's no way. There's no way they're throwing the ball to him. Tell me why you're going to put Kyler Murray in instead of Baker Mayfield.
So let's go back and revisit, because I know what you're saying about odds. But if I'm a coach and I'm in Lincoln Riley's situation, I call the same exact play because I don't have a problem with it. I know you want to punch someone in the face.
Man, I'm getting a frustration
headache. But the reality is, number one, I just want to make it clear. I don't have a problem with those calls. If we lose the game, is my story different? Maybe, but I wouldn't like to think so. Number 2, why is Kyler Murray in there? Fastest kid on the team.
He tripped on his own feet.
Fastest kid on the team.
He tripped at the line. I get that. He tripped at the line of scrimmage. Okay. I'm really getting frustrated with your answers here. Here's the thing. Stop. Here's what I just want to say this. I'm okay with trying it once. I'm not okay with taking the best player in the country off the field. They took him off the field 5 times, Rich.
I know.
5 times.
Let me ask you this question. Are you buying into the argument that Baker Mayfield was pulled in favor of Kyler Murray because of his missed week of practice?
Dude threw for 400 yards.
I agree. Why start him if that's going to be your argument? I didn't buy into it.
He rolled out of bed and threw for 400 yards and scored 4 touchdowns. The interception wasn't his fault. That interception was on CD Lamb. Okay, let's change sports. Okay, World Series is starting. Pick the best hitter in the world. Okay, let's get Big Papi. All right, you've got to have runs in the World Series. Oh, you know what? Hey, we're gonna let a guy who's he's batted 5 at bats the whole season. We're gonna put him.
Correa be a little more relevant.
Okay, Correa. Big Papi's one of the best hitters. All right, but pick a guy. Altuve. So we're going to put in the backup second baseman who's had 5 at-bats all season long to get this clutch hit. Let's go to basketball. It's NBA season. Hey, LeBron, I know we got to have a run here, but let's go ahead and put you on the bench and Marcos Municelli, the guy we just signed from Europe, let's put him out there and see what he can do. You don't do it. You don't take the best player in the game off the field at crunch time. If you want to run that crap, run it on some first down, and then if it doesn't work, you put your best player back in. Don't keep doing it over and over again when they've clearly got to figure it out. I'm sorry. I'm not backing down from this.
Don't, please.
They got too creative with the offense. Baker Mayfield, best player in the country, leave him on the dang field.
Here's what I will
say
about Lincoln Riley, because he's consistently portrayed this image in his decision-making. And he's consistently backed it up in press conferences by saying this exact statement. I'm calling plays based upon what I think will win us the game. And you're going to disagree with it. I get it. Don't rip out your hair.
I want to be there, and I want to say, tell me what taking the best player in America off the field does to help you win a game. I mean, you want the ball in this guy's hands. He's the Heisman front runner. And you're at the goal line, and 3 times in a row, you take him out of the game. 3 times in a row.
Here's all I'm saying, Matt, is...
All I'm saying is you're settling for field goals when you could have had touchdowns.
I'm not buying in to the we pulled him in favor of Kyler Murray because he missed a week of practice. Therefore, Kyler Murray got reps with the ones, and we had some things drawn up specifically for that situation.
Then let Kyler throw the football there.
That's what I'm saying. And Kyler Murray's proven that he can
throw
the football.
Kyler Murray's a big boy. Okay, he's been at Texas A&M. He plays baseball. He plays football. I'm going to Kyler Murray, and I'm saying, look, dude, I know here's what we told you. And I thank you for being a team player last week. But the game flow did not dictate putting you in there. We needed Baker in there. I'm going to make it up to you. I'm giving you the second series against Texas Tech. Or whatever. I mean, Kyler Murray's a big boy. And I've got questions whether Kyler Murray's going to be there next year anyway. And I'm wondering, are we not throwing some concessions to Kyler Murray? Because I legitimately wonder, where's he going to – he's going to get drafted in June. The Major League Baseball is going to draft this kid. Where's he going in the Major League draft, and is it enough to pull him away? Are we going to hear sometime in the spring Kyler Murray has quit football to focus on baseball? We've seen it happen already at this university. And if it does, best of luck to him. But Kyler Murray's he's already been drafted once. He's going to get drafted again. Is it going to be high enough to woo him away from football? I'm at a loss. I'm in my mind, I'm trying to figure out what the heck are we doing, because I don't think we're trying to win a game right here.
One thing we can agree on is people are infatuated by Kyler Murray's speed. Regardless of sport, whether that's on the gridiron or whether that's running the bases, people like his speed.
I feel like we've been more argumentative today than typical.
Should they buy into that?
Am I in a bad mood?
No, not at all. We just sit on opposite sides of the fence, and that's A-okay. Everyone's going to have an opinion, but like I said, when you look at that speed, you want to utilize it. And it's difficult to say the best way to utilize it today is to let it sit on the sideline.
Okay, but I liked go back to the Ohio State game. Mm-hmm. They ran the option with him.
Right.
Where was that? I mean, the draw play, to its credit, the draw play was open, but he couldn't get out of his own way. I think Kyler Murray is a guy who has to have things going. The option works because things are going. But the draw play is wide open, and boom, he tripped on the blade of grass or on turf or whatever.
Turf monster grass.
The point is, I don't agree with taking Baker Mayfield off that many times. I'm okay with taking him off and running the wildflower and it working. I'm okay with taking him off and running the wildflower and it not working, as long as we don't do it 2 more times in a row. You see what I'm saying? Give the kid a chance. If he's injured, if he's too injured to be in there on 3rd and goal from the 4-yard line, then he's too injured to be in the game. That's just my point. I mean, just bench him.
Well, here, to the injury point, I don't believe that Baker Mayfield's injured. Why? We saw last week Baker Mayfield slides and he gets drilled. He pays a penalty for it. This week, did you see him sliding when he ran the ball?
I saw him run over safeties because he's angry.
That's what I'm talking about. Is if this guy is truly injured, why, number one, is he running? 2, why is he running people over? Why is he not shying away from contact?
Right.
That's not the sign of an injured player to me.
No, I feel you. I do think there is an injury. I just think Baker's knowing Baker's Warrior mentality, it's, hey, I slid last week and got hurt. This week, if I'm going to get hurt, I'm going to get hurt trying to hurt you.
I went on record saying I still don't think it's anything to do with a shoulder or rib. I thought it was just the hand, and I still hold true to that.
Okay. We got to talk. I'm looking at our clock ticking away here. We're at 45 minutes almost. Rodney Anderson.
Rodney Anderson against Kansas State is who we expected him to be game one.
Right. I mean,
I don't know what's happened. I don't know the change, the mindset. Maybe it's him getting more carries. But it also begs the question of where was Trey Sermon?
Yeah. And I think if I'm Marcelius Sutton, I'm thinking maybe this isn't the place for me.
Yeah.
I mean, I don't want to be that guy. But you're looking at a young Rodney Anderson. You're looking at a true freshman in Trey Sermon.
Mm-hmm.
And Abdul Adams is in the mix there too but he's injured.
They're all underclassmen.
Right. And so if I'm Sutton, I'm going, I mean, I can hang it. I can stick it out. I can. You see guys do that, be team players, just because they like the university, they like the program. But if you're a guy who wants to play,
those are typically guys who look at the coaching side. Those guys that stick around, they want to move into coaching.
I kept looking for some sort of injury report on Trey Sermon because he just vanished.
Yeah, I don't know, Matt. I Google searched that every single day since Saturday to see if anything would come up. I've tuned into the press conference. No mention, no questions about him. Yeah. I don't know what happened.
Well, I mean, I think it's one of those things Lincoln Riley has said. We kind of ride the hot hand, and Rodney Anderson had the hot hand. And I'm happy for him, man. I mean, I'm not – this isn't one of those, holy crap, where's Trey Sermon? Why are we not keep putting the best player on the field type? I'm happy for Rodney Anderson because of the story. I love the story. And we have said that he's not the same guy who came to campus because of injury, but he is. He just needed some time to get his legs underneath him, so to speak. I'm very happy with what I'm seeing out of Rodney Anderson.
So you had mentioned having some issues with the offense. Was it just the play calling? Was it the oddities that we saw on Saturday, or was it in total?
No.
You're just singling out.
I think I've my two rants for the Oklahoma and Oklahoma State are for Oklahoma. Why are you taking Baker Mayfield off the field? And essentially, it's the same argument for Oklahoma State. Why are you taking Mason Rudolph out of the game? Is Mason Rudolph really the guy you want to hand the ball off 50 times?
Are you asking me? Because the answer is no every single day of the week.
And you don't and here's the thing with Oklahoma State. You don't hand the ball off 50 times because you got Mason Rudolph as a quarterback. You don't hand the ball off 50 times because you've got James Washington, Marcel Aitman, and the rest of that cast of receivers there. That's why you don't hand the ball off if you're Mike Gundy. I don't know. I think both offenses tried to get too creative on Saturday, and it really cost them. Mm-hmm. For Oklahoma State, 13 points. That game went into overtime, and this offense scored 13 points.
Yeah, it's inexcusable.
Now the Cowboys are going to West Virginia, and that's never easy. They better have a different mindset against the Mountaineers because the Mountaineers are going to be out to – they're out for blood. I mean, they almost lost it against Baylor. Now they get Oklahoma State, and I think the reason they're struggling against Baylor is because they know Oklahoma State's coming next week. Next weekend is going to be a fun weekend in Big 12 football. I hate the fact that Oklahoma State, West Virginia is an 11 o'clock tip-off. Tip-off? Did I just say that?
You did.
11 o'clock kickoff.
Media days were up in Kansas City for the Big 12 basketball.
Well, good.
So maybe that's on your mind?
Maybe it is. Oklahoma State, West Virginia, 11 a.m. I don't – put them at 2:30. Put them at 3. I like Oklahoma at Texas Tech. Texas Tech at Oklahoma. I like that at 9 o'clock. At 7 o'clock. I am just done, okay? I've argued and I've used all my words. I like that as
frustrated you. You're done.
I like that as a 7 o'clock kick because I'm going to Missouri. A good friend of ours is having his senior day. So I'll be in Springfield, Missouri for that. But it'll give me time to get to watch the OU game. I just hate the 11 a.m. kickoff because that game, I believe, is going to be one of the better games. Well, I think it may be the best game of the weekend. I think OU and Texas Tech is going to be good. I think TCU and Iowa State could be good. I think Kansas State, Kansas, Baylor, Texas are just trash games. Actually, Baylor Baylor. What if Baylor gets their first win? Is that equivalent to losing to Kansas? If your first win of the season, you're 7 weeks in, and your first win comes against Texas, is that equivalent to losing to Kansas?
For Texas,
Yes.
absolutely.
So maybe that's the reason to tune in. I don't know. Thoughts? Any other thoughts on because we haven't even talked about Texas Tech, and we've got 10 minutes.
We haven't.
Are you ready to say Texas Tech is the same as well?
Let me phrase it this way.
I jumped off I was on the Texas Tech train, and I jumped off of it 2 weeks ago, and I'm staying off of it.
Last week, what we had talked about with Kansas State was going to run the ball. They were going to control the time of possession. We knew that that's who they were. It was their identity. The flip side of that is Lincoln Riley will tell you this as well, because he said it very recently, was that they don't like to run the ball at Texas Tech. They didn't do it when he was there. Needless to say, I think just a quick primer for the game is that Oklahoma should, and they most likely will, drop 8 into coverage more often than not. And that's because everybody else has done it and has been successful against Texas Tech. So I don't see a reason to change. When I'm looking at the slate of games, I will say I do agree with you. It's not my number one pick in terms of must tune into type games. I am going with that Oklahoma State West Virginia game.
17 first half passing yards for Texas Tech on Saturday.
Mm-hmm. I thought it was 18. So
18.
You got me by 1.
Okay, but they did it on 11 of 13 passing.
Mm-hmm.
Iowa State put on a clinic in open field tackling on Saturday. Oklahoma's going to have to do the same thing. Your confidence level on a scale of 1 to 10 that's going to happen on Saturday.
Depends on which side of the field it goes to. So 6.
Okay.
6.
I think it's the same Texas Tech. I really do. Mm-hmm. I think this is it for Cliff Kingsbury. I think he's starting to realize that. I think the team is starting to realize that. You're right. I do look at body language, and I'm looking at the body language as they're just getting shellacked by Iowa State. I think they know. I mean, I don't know how much. I mean, I don't think you're going to get. I don't think if you're Texas Tech, you're going to get hyped up for the Baker Mayfield thing because you've moved on. Nick Shimonik is the new guy. He wasn't really a rival of Baker Mayfield like Patty Mahomes was. I think that for Texas Tech, there's just no fire left in that. I think for Baker, there's still fire left in that. I think there's going to be offensive success for Texas just for the same reason I thought Kansas State would have offensive success. I just don't think their defense is the worst defense on the field Saturday night is going to be on the visitor sideline. And when you're talking about high power offenses, if Oklahoma doesn't turn it over, if they force turnovers, I always feel when you're talking about spread offenses, you play for stops, you don't play for a shutout, and you get those stops. I think Oklahoma wins this game. And I think when you look at guys, just because of time frame, when you look at guys who have to have a big game, not named Baker Mayfield, it goes to the running game. Trey Sermon, Rodney Anderson, Abdul Adams, whoever goes out there. Oklahoma has to have a couple of 100 yards rushing. I think if they're going to win in a blowout, they will win this game comfortably, they need to have at least 200 yards rushing because that's the recipe to beating Texas Tech. Your thoughts?
No, I completely agree with you, and it'll be interesting to watch that running back rotation as it. Excuse me.
You okay there? You need a bottle of water?
No, I'm good. It's been an interesting storyline to follow all season long. I don't think that changes heading into this week and looking ahead at Texas Tech. Word on the street was that Abdul Adams could have played had they needed him.
Well, he was dressed out
against Kansas State. Yeah. They just didn't want to really test anything too early and cause him to re-injure that foot before he was 100%. So could we see him this week? Absolutely. I think we do see him. Is it in a limited role? Most likely at this point because you are expected to win once again. It's kind of taking on that similar role of you don't play Mark Andrews unless you absolutely needed him because we saw exactly what happened to him. Re-aggravated that knee, sat out for the rest of the game, and then came back the following week. But needless to say, Oklahoma, I think they win comfortably. I think they've got the offensive line. I think they've got the edge at the running back position, and I think they've got the edge quarterbacks-wise as well. So looking across the board, it's really the defense that's bringing the question marks. You've mentioned open field tackles. What happens when they throw to Jordan Thomas's side of the field? Is he a guy who can either break that pass up, or is he going to miss, and a guy goes 30 yards, right, 35 yards down the field before someone catches him? That's my biggest question mark heading into this game. But again, Oklahoma better on both sides of the ball. I do expect a win.
I think Abdul Adams, just going to go back to that point, I think what I would like to see happen is you kind of test the waters with him, let him get a couple carries, in each quarter. But really, you're looking down the road, you're going to need Abdul Adams after this game. You need him a lot more than, you don't really need him against Kansas, but you really need him against TCU. You need him against Oklahoma State. Those are the games coming up where you really need Abdul Adams. Okay, here we go. Let's go down the Big 12 rundown as we close it out. Oklahoma State, West Virginia, Cowboys 7.5-point favorites. Give me your thoughts there.
That one's going to be a fun game, man. I do expect more of a shootout. It is in Morgantown. We know that it's not quite the same as Lubbock and craziness happening there, but because of the distance traveled, crazy things do happen in colder weather. I expect it to be still a shootout. What it's going to come down to for me is not who can run the ball better, but who is throwing the deep pass more consistently. And I like Mason Rudolph. I think he's very capable of that. But when Will Grier is on, he's on. And so, again, it'll be a fun game to watch. I'm not expecting it to be 7.5 points. I can see it being 10, but I can also see it being 3. So I think that's a fair assessment. If I'm picking a winner out of the gate, I'm going to have to give the edge to Oklahoma State because of what I saw defensively from them against Texas.
Yeah, I'm not even going to go down the Texas road again, but I think when you said Will Grier, with all the attention in this league that goes to Baker Mayfield and Mason Rudolph, Will Grier is quietly having a really good season as well. I think this game takes on more of the nature of the Big 12 with this shootout. I do think offensive line struggles are going to continue to be an issue for Oklahoma State, and that helps West Virginia in several areas. But at the end of the day, I like this to be a field goal game for Oklahoma State. I think it's going to be an entertaining game, and I think Oklahoma State, and Matt Amendola maybe gets his redemption and wins this game like 38-35, something like that. Texas Baylor. Do the Bears spread offense? I mean, they threw the ball all over West Virginia last week. Can they do that to Texas? Can Baylor get their first win of the season?
I think slowly but surely. As we've talked about in depth, apparently, Texas and things in Austin are turning south. The mentality is turning south. You're really looking at the freshman quarterback, incredible athlete in Ellinger, incredible toughness embodied in one person that you don't
not good enough to
find
start
very
next
frequently.
Year.
No, I just don't think he's the passer
go ahead.
that they need him to be. So yeah, needless to say, I think it's a tough game, and I think Baylor challenges them. But ultimately, I'm just gonna go for it, man. I'm gonna say Baylor does get their first win, and it's on a big play.
I'm gonna give you knuckles there. I don't think it's gonna happen, but I think if Texas wins ugly, and then we get to hear how awesome Tom Herman is after that, and how things are changing, and just wait till they sign this recruiting class. Kansas State, Kansas. The only thing I want to know here is do the Wildcats cover 24.5 points?
Yes.
Yeah, I think the two coaches that are done in the Big 12 are Cliff Kingsbury and Dave Beatty at Kansas. I thought maybe he would have a chance to turn the tide, but when you watch this team, this is a team that has given up on the season, and even though it's an in-state rivalry, it's not going to take long for them just to get beat down. TCU, Iowa State, maybe a little bit of a trap game for TCU. What do you think here?
Iowa State's playing at an extremely high level. They are, one win away from being bowl eligible, which was their goal at the onset of the season from what I've read. The defense is playing lights out, but here's what it comes down to for Iowa State is by circumstances that were out of their control, they actually found a quarterback who can lead this team. I think that's been the biggest difference for them. And looking at what they're bringing to the table, they look like a complete team. They're playing complementary football at this point in time, and I think they're going to be tough to beat. but TCU's really dang good.
Right.
And so it'll be an interesting game. That one's in Ames, if I'm not mistaken.
Yes.
Is that correct? Being in Ames, you do give a little bit of sway to Iowa State, but I think TCU is good enough to pull it out.
Yeah, I mean TCU. The thing they bring is balance, and when you're trying to challenge a good defense, which Iowa State is playing really good defense right now. When you're trying to challenge them, you bring balance, and I think it's going to be a low scoring game. I think Matt Campbell, if he wins this game, Big 12 Coach of the Year, and I think Iowa State legitimately has to begin to worry about keeping this guy in Ames. If they win this game, I'm there in the locker room with a contract extension offer right there on the spot. I'm serious because people are already talking about him and so forth. But I don't think they win. Texas Tech at Oklahoma, 19-point favorite for the Sooners. I'm going to give my score prediction first and then let you go second. I don't think it's a 19-point game. I really don't. And the reason why is the same reason why I didn't like the spread last week. Oklahoma's defense is going to have to prove to me that they can keep games close. They can put distance. And I've not yet seen that I haven't seen that from Oklahoma defense really since they played Tulane. And so I'm going to say Oklahoma wins this game by about a touchdown. I'm thinking 42-35, somewhere around there. Does that sound familiar to you score-wise?
Yeah, it sure does. I'm taking the opposite direction, and I'm running hard in that direction away from you at this point in time because I do think Oklahoma covers the spread. It's the first time they're playing in front of a home crowd in 3 weeks. I think.
Well, we know what happened last time they played in front of a home crowd.
Do we?
Yeah, they were 28-point favorites.
Mm-hmm. And they lost.
Yeah, just saying. Night game though. Night games are different.
All I'm saying
a lot more energy in night games. People jump around.
I'm hoping. I'm not expecting that same level of energy, but I'm hoping the crowd can at least. I've always been a large proponent of saying that the crowd really has no effect on the game, outside of delay of game penalties, and that's closer to the end zone. Needless to say, like I said, I'm just running hard in the opposite direction of you and saying that Oklahoma covers because it is a home game. The first home game that they've played in 3 weeks. So I'm going to go ahead and give it to them. I also have Oklahoma scoring 42, but I only see Texas Tech at about 21-24 range.
All right. Well, if they score 24, they don't cover.
I'm
just saying. All right. He's Rich. I'm Matt. Heartland-sports.com. Heartland-sports.com. At Sports Heartland on Twitter. Thanks for listening. We'd love to hear your thoughts on the podcast. If you got us on iTunes or whatever, send us a tweet. If you're at heartland-sports.com, leave a comment. Have a great week. Enjoy your college football, everybody.